Good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Materia Medica, and we are discussing regarding the Aconite since last lecture. We have discussed a case of Aconite followed by some aspects of Aconite, how the Aconite presents, what may be the constitution with which Aconite presents, how young they are, and how acute susceptibility is there with which they react. So these aspects we have learned in yesterday's lecture, where the patient presents in a great fear, the countenance is full of fear. Fear dominates anxiety over there, and patient is always in a turmoil. He presents to you in a very, very, very acute mode. And that's the presentation, whether the patient suffers from a cardiac problem or neurological problem or dental problem or abdominal problem, whatever it may be, the state of aconite, which is very, very essential to grab. And once you grab this specific state of aconite, then it is quite easy to prescribe and get the results with aconite. So Aconite will not going to come to you in a quiet way or in a mild way. He will enter in your clinic with lot of noise and enters with a turmoil. And these are the things which you have to catch over there in the Aconite. One more case where the same Aconite state was there when patient was brought to me with a severe, very severe acute abdominal colic. So generally what happens when we consider the abdominal colic, we used to think of colocynth or macphos as an acute remedies over there. So similar thought was there in my mind. But basically, when I saw his state, he was presenting aconite with a severe pain in the abdomen, and he was pressing it very hard and crying and talking and saying all those things. Typical doctor, I'm going to die, do something and everything, and all those things. So question was there in my mind whether to go for colocin or to go for aconite, because this happens many times, because colocin is also a very acute remedy in where patient also bends double and tries to relieve pain in that specific position. So there were two thoughts, but the countenance was full of fear. His body language was basically expressing the aconite and not the colocin. Here you have to differentiate specifically at the mental, physical level, psychological level, and you have to catch that, and which was expressing on his fear, on his face, the fear. So I decided to give aconite instead of giving a colocin in that acute state, and let us see what happens. So I never thought a lot. I never went for finding it out modalities, because there was no time, because patient was in agony. So I decided to give aconite. I immediately put 4 pills of aconite 200 in his mouth. And aconite is so fast in action. It is so instantaneous that within minutes the patient gets relieved. The panic state disappeared basically. First disappears is always a panic state. It is not the colic which disappears immediately. Panic state disappears, and once panic state is disappeared, then you can easily control the patient. So patient came out of that situation in that at that moment, and after some time, after a span of 5 minutes, when I examined, everything found to be normal. There was nothing wrong at that time. But the pains also vanished. So here the colic relieved by aconite in such a manner, because patient was of aconite and not of the local pathology. You have to decide what the patient is presenting. If you are able to find it out all those things, then it is quite easy to catch the remedy. These are the peoples who enters and they are always very hasty and hurried. Very hasty and hurried. They want you that they should get examined immediately, and they talk very hurriedly. That is very typical with the aconite. Their speech is very hasty, hurried. They are always very fast in their work, in their occupation. And this is aconite personality. Aconite is not a quiet personality at all. And that's why whenever Aconite enters in your clinic, he enters with such a thing, and that's what you have to catch. Then you can prescribe Aconite successfully. So yesterday we have discussed only one thing about the mind of the Aconite. On the about the Aconite, the countenance is expressive of fear. The life is rendered miserable by fear. That paragraph we have finished. Let us go ahead. What he says about the Aconite further. Restlessness, anxious, does everything in great haste, must change position often, everything startles him. And this is again one important thing. Here it looks very close to arsenic, the restlessness. No, arsenic restlessness is different. Arsenic restlessness is a mental restlessness because of some anxiety lying in our, there is some anxiety in the mind behind the thought, and that's why the patient is restless. He must change position, not in order to relieve or to get relief from the pain, but he must change position because he was not mentally satisfied in arsenic. That's why he goes here and there, but his motion, his action is not that acute, which you used to find it out with the Aconite. Aconite always presents in a very panic and turmoil state, and that's why it is very easy to differentiate between Aconite and arsenic regarding restlessness, regarding the anxiety, and basically the fear element which differentiates it very easily. That one thing which was mentioned over there, does everything in a great haste. That is very typical. So he is hasty hurried while walking, he is hasty hurried while talking, he is hasty hurried in occupation, he is hasty hurried in walking, movement. Everything, whatever he does, is always hurriedness. That is very marked with the Aconite. And that point which you have to catch in the patient. Second important thing which he mentions, must change the position of it. So Aconite patient cannot remain in one place because of the severity of the pain and the state which develops over there, because of which he becomes so restless. And last point which he mentions over there, everything startles him. Slightest things because of which Aconite gets started, because of which Aconite gets disturbed. So even he is normal, not a disease. Aconite, if he is an Aconite person, always have this simple thing that gets very easily started, and they goes into the panic state. So this is very, very, very typical of the Aconite Napellus. The pains which are mentioned over there are very important. The pains are intolerable, and this is very important thing. Intolerance of pain, very, very characteristic. Naxomica, lachesis, aconite, chamomilla, very specific pain remedy where they can't tolerate the pain over there. So are intolerable, they drive him crazy. Drive him crazy means they are entering, the patient becomes mad because of pains. That's why he comes in panic state. He was not unaware that in which where he is. He never understands what his position is, and it affects to him to such an extent that he goes panic, and he goes on talking in such a nonsense manner, and he says, doctor, do something, I'm dying, I'm all those things. He becomes very restless because of pains. So pains are causing him a restlessness, and specifically at night it happens more. In daytime, comparatively better, but at night he feels helpless, because of which he goes in a more panic state at the night. So see, the pains are very important. The fear is very important. The anxiety is very important. The restlessness is very important. But it has its own essence of the aconite. It is absolutely different from the rest of the remedies. Hahnemann says, and this sentence just make underline, and this is very, very, very important thing what Hahnemann have told. Hahnemann says, whenever aconite is chosen homeopathically, you must above all observe the moral symptoms and be careful that it closely resembles them. The anguish of the body, mind and body, the restlessness and disquiet, not to be allied. See, very important thing. If you are prescribing a remedy to a patient who is absolutely calm, he is not at all agonized. The anguish of mind and body, very important. Anguish word is very essential word. What is the meaning of anguish? Anguish, we in Marathi we can call it yatana. Hindi में भी यातना ही बोलते हैं उसको. It is a very severe type of pain which one person cannot tolerate. And not only it is the physical pain, it is the mental pain also. And that's why that affects the whole human being, both at the both level, the physical level as well as the mental level. And that's why he gets affected so strongly over there. So when such a state is there, then it's definitely aconite. If it is not there, then aconite is not the remedy. Hanuman was very clear regarding it, and that's why he explains over there. Anguish of the mind and body, the restlessness, disquiet state. If the quiet patient is there in front of you, it is not aconite, it is not chamomila, it is not naxomika. They are not quiet personalities. Naxwamika at least wants to be quiet for some time because he is not quiet. That is very important in Naxwamika. They wants quiet, wants to be desires, repose and tranquility. Naks is there because he cannot stay quiet. That is the problem with the Naks, and for that purpose they want that repose and tranquility, quietness in Naxwamika. So these are the remedies which are very, very, very active remedies, and in such active states they never remains to be calm, and they never enters in such a way where you can prescribe accordingly. They enters in your clinic in a panic state, and that's what the state which Hahnemann have explained. The three important things which he mentions: anguish of mind and body, the second is restlessness, and third is the disquietness. These are more moral symptoms, means these symptoms of this aconite. Moral symptoms means without this you cannot think of aconite. If you are thinking about aconite, these are the symptoms should be there, otherwise you cannot. That is what is moral symptoms. So these are moral, means in Marathi we can naitik, which you called according to the rules. So according to the rules, these are the symptoms which should be there when you are selecting the aconite. That is what is called as moral symptoms. The mental anxiety, worry, fear accompanies the most trivial element. What he said? The mental anxiety, worry, and fear accompanies most trivial element. What is trivial? It is very, very minute. A trivial means trifles, very minute. And even that minute element, these three things are always present. This is very important regarding the Aconite Napellus. So Aconite presents to you with all these three important entities. Without that, Aconite never comes. So this is one important thing you must add in your thought of Aconite. Yes, this should be there. Without that, Aconite is not there. And then one more feature, which is very, very important. They are in such a turmoil state. They cannot tolerate music. Music is unbearable, makes her sad, like Sabina. Like there is a specifically if it happens during menses, it is natrum carbonicum. That's the differentiation which has been mentioned over there by Allen, that if the music is intolerable, makes her sad, specifically during menses, if it happens, that is related with natrum carb. But with Sabina, with Aconite, they can't tolerate. Aconite, he is in such a state, he cannot tolerate music, he cannot tolerate the noise. The sensitivity is so much marked. These are sensitive remedies. The chamomila, naxumika, aconite, they are very sensitive, where that noise is intolerable. This is what happens with them. On rising from a recumbent position, the red face becomes deathly pale, or he becomes faint or giddy and falls, and he fears to rise again, often accompanied by vanishing of sight and unconsciousness. And this is very, very important thing regarding the specifically regarding the aconite. Patient, whenever lying down, he is quite good, looking absolutely bloody. The face is absolutely red over there. But as soon as he rises up, he becomes pale. The fainting happens. What it is called as? This is called as a postural hypotension. The postural hypotension is quite common with this remedy. It happens quite commonly with this, and because of which the patient falls down. They faints. They immediately gets a vertigo and they falls down. This is the thing which you can get with the aconite, that they never want to rise because they feel that they will fall down. That fear is also there. There is that something will happen. That type of fear is also there with the aconite. So you have to understand these concepts in relation with the modern medicine. So whenever this symptom is mentioned over there, you must correlate what is that condition in which such a thing happens. So rising from recumbent position, the red face becomes deathly pale and he becomes faint and giddy and falls and he fears to rise again. And that is the fear which happens to be there. They feel that whenever they rise up, they again will going to fall. That fear is always there in background. And last, often accompanied by vanishing of sight and unconsciousness. So they tells you, yes, there is nothing they cannot see. That vanishing of sight is absolutely there whenever they rise up, and the patient goes into the state of unconsciousness also. So that is another important feature with which you can think about the aconite. Aconite is an acute remedy in such states. If you want to bring that patient out, give the aconite, and aconite works instantaneously. But in such cases, it is always better to put a drop of aconite on the tongue instead of giving the pills. If the patient becomes unconscious, it is always better to put a single drop of aconite, and it works. Patient will come out instantaneously from such a condition. So this is very important thing what Alan is explaining about the state of aconite. And this state one should not forget that generally a postural hypotension which happens to be there and patient becomes unconscious, put a drop of aconite and you bring that patient out. Then the female genitalias. Amenorrhea in plethoric young girls after fright. So amenorrhea due to the fright, which is given in bold. Very important things which are mentioned in bold. Whenever patient has frightened and developed amenorrhea, the thing is very clear that it is aconite. To prevent the suppression of menses, very important. If the girl who has been frightened, to prevent the suppression, give the aconite, because this can happen. And if it happens, then to bring it out again the menses is a rather difficult task. So to prevent the separation of menses, it is always better to give a dose of aconite, and it is very useful uh, to throw away whatever the fright is there in their mind. And then next sentence. And that sentence one must understand properly. That already we have discussed in yesterday's lecture. For the congestive stage of inflammation before the localization takes place. And many people never understand this. The inflammation, when you learn by the heart, then you will understand this. Inflammation, according to the pathology, the first stage is a congestion, but prior to it, the pain starts. Then there is a vasodilation. Because of vasodilation, the part looks red because more accumulation of blood is there, and then part becomes red. The in signs of inflammation, this is one important sign which develops over there. That is the first stage of inflammation. Yes, there are five cardinal features of the inflammation. It is rumor, tumor, calor, dolor, and loss of function. That is the loss functiologia. These are the 5 important cardinal symptoms. Out of which the congestive stage happens to be there with belladonna. Before a localization happens, for example, the patient is complaining of severe sore throat, but still there is no congestion. It has just a pains has started, and pains are the prior indication before a localization has taken place. Then that state is of a aconite state. Inflammation is there, but it has not yet expressed, it has not localized in the part. The pain is the first primary intimation that something is going wrong, and then inflammation develops later. So it is a prior state before inflammation which settles in, that is aconite. So for the congestive stage of inflammation, before localization takes place, that is what is aconite. And then comes the state of verum phosphoricum, where the localization starts appearing, the blood vessel starts, you can see the engorged blood vessels over there. And when it becomes completely red, total congestion, then it becomes belladonna. So these are the states with which you correlate your remedies. This is the pathology with which you can correlate your remedies, and then you can catch them very easily. So when you are thinking about all those things, you must think in a proper direction so that it becomes very easy to catch a remedy at that time. It never takes a time to find it out remedy in such cases, because if you know what pathology you are treating, and accordingly you can think and you can catch that. So that sentence, if you understood it properly, then it becomes simple for application. And we'll discuss only the fever today, and we'll finish. The rest of the things we'll discuss tomorrow. Fever, there is skin is dry and hot. So he is explaining the whole state of fever with which the patient comes to. So what is it? Fever, skin dry and hot. The skin becomes absolutely dry and hot during the fever state. The face is red or pale and red alternately. So it is completely congested, then it becomes pale also, then again it becomes red also. That is alternating state is there. Then fever with burning thirst for large quantities of cold water. Burning thirst, severe thirst. When this burning thirst is there during the heat stage, during the fever, patient is asking for cold water only. They ask, give me a cold water, give me a cold water. They never tolerate the even as water from a jar, which is little bit lukewarm. They never tolerate. So burning thirst for the large quantities of cold water during fever state. Then one more thing which is mentioned again in bold, the first skin dry and hot that he has mentioned in bold. Now he says fever, intense fever, along with intense nervous restlessness, tossing about in agony. See, intense nervous restlessness, because patient is continuously on the tip of nerves. He's moving here and there. He's continuously changing the position. He's tossing in bed, changing from one side to another side, and gets disturbed again and again, again and again. That is what is the state of fever in Aconite. They never lie down calmly. This is very specific about the Aconite state. So tossing about in agony is like that they cannot remain in one place. And along with that, they always talks, doctor, please do something, please help me, give me a urgent medicine, I'll die. This state is associated with the fever. So they remains in that specific state. Fever becomes intolerable towards evening and on going to sleep. So before going to sleep in the evening, the fever becomes so much marked and they get so much affected at that time that they always continuously changing their position. They are restless, they are moving, they are tossing, they are disturbed, they are just talking, all those things which happens to be there during the fever state. And that is what is the aconite fever. So the whole panorama is there in front of your mind when you read the Allen's keynotes. That is the states. These are the states which you have to catch. Every paragraph is a state with which patient might present to you. So during fever, he comes to you with all these features, and all these features are very, very essential features with which you catch is this is aconite fever. So patient asks for cold water. Patient is restless. Patient tosses in agony. He's just predicting the death. He's in turmoil. He's talking steely. All those things which you can catch along with the fever. That fever is of the aconite fever. So I think it's better to conclude over here, and tomorrow we'll finish this remedy completely. So the aconite state will become quite fixed in your mind once you understand all those things. So that's all for today. We'll have a queries and then we'll conclude.
Snake bite, no.
Yes,
In snake bite, all these symptoms is found. For first aid, we can give aconite.
I'm not getting your voice clearly.
For
Huh?
snake bite, no. All these symptoms is found except that foams coming out. Except this foam coming out, all the symptoms of aconite is present. As a first aid, we can, they should not be restless or increase the blood pressure. For that, we can give aconite something like this.
If whole state is there of a aconite, whether it is snake bite or anything, during an acute state, immediately in patient is in agony, definitely aconite is the state. But here, two things you have to take into consideration. Yes, you can give aconite, but here the disease is not dynamic only. Here the disease is dynamic as well as material. Because some material poison has entered, that poison you have to antidote because things are material here. That is, they are not completely dynamic. So aconite to control that state is definitely a good answer. But at the same time, you have to take the help of antidotal treatment because poison has been completely injected inside, and that poison is the material entity. It is not a dynamic disorder. Homeopathy deals with the material dynamic disorders, not with the material disorder. Okay.
Sir, sir, one question.
Hmm?
Sir, one question.
Yes.
In case of intolerable pain, sir, patient age around 80. I have given Nux vomica once, then first I have given chamomilla, then after that I have given Nux vomica. Can you use the aconite in that case? Intolerable pain is all the time, pain is there. It is a neurological pain, I think.
Basically, if the patient is calling for aconite, he should be in aconite state. Aconite is not just a pain remedy, not at all. That state should be presented. Then you can give the aconite. Patient should be in agony. Patient should be in with that fear, with that anxiety, with that restlessness, with that tossing in bed. All those things should be present. Then you can prescribe. Burning thirst means
But it is
too severe.
But it is just a chronic case. It's not a acute case. In chronic case, acute exacerbation is not also there.
Then
it is
not an aconite. Then it is not an aconite.
Okay.
Burning thirst means it is a severe thirst, tremendous, can't tolerate. Music unbearable for all external sounds. Yes. Basically, music is specific that they are not in harmony, and music has a harmony. So during this harmony, they cannot like the harmony. That is the thing which is there with it. So that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll meet with the philosophy session at 5:45 and 8:30. We'll conclude the aconite in tomorrow's session. Thanks a lot.